Welcome to the second podcast produced by Miners Promise. We are very excited to be back with you again. Thank you once again to Josh Collins and the Gold Room podcast and Problematic Media for their kind support of us in endeavouring on our new podcast series. It is my absolute honour and delight today to be here with Robina Haines. Welcome, Robina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here. So we've known Robina at Miners Promise for a decade now, and we're going to spend some time learning about Robina's story, learning about her beloved Nige, and learning a little bit more about her journey with Miners Promise. So, Robina, I've had the honour of reading your book as well, and we will reflect on that as we go, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. The amazing thing about your book is you tell your life story and your beautiful love story with Nige. I thought we'd start just with a little bit about your upbringing. There's some beautiful moments in your book about particularly you and your mum, and just so if you'd like to just maybe give us a little bit of your backstory.
Okay, well, I was actually brought up in the country in the Midwest, in a little town, wheat belt town called Carew. My parents were business people and my mother was the local nurse there, and I had a very free childhood, like the real country kid,
Yeah.
riding horses and then, I ended up when I got older. I travelled. I had a quite a nice childhood. Yeah.
And you your love of reading and writing developed.
Always.
Yeah.
Always had that. Love. Mum said she used to have to call out like lights off now. It's 11 o'clock at night, and I was 9. So.
And you're still reading.
And I was still reading, reading and writing, and it was actually even as a teenager it helped me get through those difficult years, teenage years where I used to write a lot then too. Never thought it would turn into anything. It was just something I did for myself. Like the books as well that I've written, I didn't initially write anything to be published. I wrote it for myself, just to understand my journey and try and it's very isolating when you lose somebody, and I just felt it gave me a bit of solace and comfort.
It was a bit cathartic almost, being able to express yourself.
Yeah. It wasn't until a friend actually read a bit of my work, and she said, "Oh, you really should look at getting this published," and so I did, and here we are.
Here we are indeed. So you grew up in the wheat belt. You went away for school.
Yes.
You spent some time in Perth. You spent some time in the very big smoke of London.
Yes.
Returned to WA and ended up returning a little bit, I guess, to home and spending a bit of time back out in the wheat belt. Tell us about how you met Nige.
Okay, so I did come home from London. It was only supposed to be temporary. I came over for a friend's wedding, and I went back home and went down to the local pub, as you do, a main centre of town. And I was talking to a couple of friends, and one of my friends was telling me, I was saying, "Well, where are you living and what are you doing?" It's going, "Oh, we've got a house on the farm and I live with Raph and another guy, Nige." Well, they called him Nangers. And I went, "Oh, right, okay, where's he?" And he said, "Oh, he's probably out planting lawn or something, he's that sort of person." I went, "Oh, right, yeah." Anyway, about half an hour later, he walked into the pub and I saw him across the room and I thought, I'm going to be with him.
Wow.
I just knew. Yeah.
Love struck immediately.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I just knew. It was some sort of knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you obviously chatted that night. You met Nangers as he
Nige.
No, I'm going to call him Nige if that's okay. Everyone.
No. I've never called him that. That's right. Just his.
That was his nickname.
Yeah, his mates, footy mates. Yeah, I used to call him that. But
and he grew up in the wheat belt as well. So he was from that sort of area.
Yeah,
or somewhere?
No, he grew up in Merredin on farming family. But his sister married a Carew farmer.
Oh, right.
So that's how he initially ended up there. Yeah.
So you connected that evening, met. What happened then? Because you weren't living at home then. You were living in Perth, weren't you?
Yes. So I was commuting. Initially, Nige didn't want to have a bar of me.
Oh,
And I
Nige.
know,
Come
I
on.
know.
What, Nige?
What was he thinking? But I was one of those very persistent people.
I can't imagine that,
Yeah,
Robina.
yeah, no, I was very persistent. And but in the end, and I stopped trying because I thought, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to be chasing somebody. And the minute I stopped trying, what do you know? He's suddenly interested. So, and from that point on, it was very quick.
Yes.
So he had already planned to do a muster up north
Mm-hmm.
on Warrawagine Station, and the work was booked. So he actually left pretty soon after I met him.
Mm-hmm.
So he went up to muster. I missed him, and he said, "Well, why don't you come up and you can work around the house or something, you know?" And I went, "Oh, okay." So off I went, and yeah, so I think it was within 4 weeks he had asked me to marry him.
Wow.
Mm.
Now, and this is part of your story with Nige, and
Yeah.
your whole journey with him is so beautiful. But please tell us about the proposal, because it's one of the most special stories
Oh, yeah.
I've encountered.
Yeah, it was quite special. So the owner of the station said to me, "How about we go up and we'll in my plane and have a look around. We'll see how the muster's going. You can have a look at the land." And I said, "Oh, I'd love that. That'd be
Yeah.
great." And Nigel said, "Oh, can I come?" And he said, "Yeah, rightio, you can have half a day off or whatever." And so off we went.
Did you think that was a bit weird?
Not really, because if you sort of knew the station owners, they were very much like that. They were
Yeah.
very laid back. They were
Yeah.
really beautiful people, and I guess I thought they just thought might be special for both of us,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So anyway, we were up in the air, and I was looking around. I was thinking, "Gee, this is beautiful, really beautiful." And then all of a sudden, the station owner, Robin, said, "Oh, would you believe it? Can't believe this. Somebody's actually graffitied the runway." And I was looking like the tarmac. I went, "What?" And he goes, "Have a look." He goes, "Can't believe it. That annoys me." I was looking out the window going, "What is that? What is it?" And I looked down and went, "Oh." And it was in big letters
Mm-hmm.
in branding paint that you do with sheep or cattle or something.
Yeah.
It said, "Robina, will you marry me?" on the runway. And I remember looking out the window going, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my," that's all I kept saying. And the station owner's wife, Lyle, she ended up turning around. She goes, "Well, are you going to say yes or not?" And he actually presented me with a ring,
Mm-hmm.
and it had its own backstory. So when he was I think he was about 13, he found this diamond ring and he took it into the police station.
So he found it.
He found it.
Yeah.
He took it into the police station, and the police said to him, "Well, look, mate, if nobody claims it within 6 months, you can have it." And anyway, nobody claimed it, and they rang him and they said, "Do you want this ring?" And he said, "Yeah." Little
Yeah.
country boy. And he went in there and he said to him, "I'm going to propose to my wife with this ring."
Oh,
And he kept it all that time.
wow. So how old were you when you got engaged?
I was 25, 24, and he was 25.
So he'd had the ring almost
Yeah, I know.
half of his life. He'd had this ring.
And what we did, it was quite a daggy ring, but we actually had it redesigned into his wedding band and used the diamonds in
Oh,
for his ring.
how
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So not long after that, you obviously mustering season, etc., and then you decided to head down to Perth, but you took your time coming back down the coast, and
Yeah,
you
we
had a bit of
did.
an adventure on the way.
Yeah, we did. We had a lovely time. And we did a few things in Perth before we headed to the country again.
Mm-hmm.
And he got a job in Carew, so we moved back
Yes.
to there. And then as time went on, he got offered a job out at Iniaba
Mm-hmm.
on a mine site out there, and that was the start of his mining journey.
Yeah.
So that wasn't that much further on, that was quite quick.
Yeah.
I think he was working Crew for a year, and then he went mining.
And at first, did you stay in Carew and he was doing the
He
FIFO, the
drive in, drive
drive
out.
out? Okay.
Yeah.
And rosters and things. I mean, what was that period of time like for you guys? Because you'd been together for
Yeah.
and travelling and adventuring together.
Actually, I have to go backtrack because he did have a job when we got to Perth. I remember that now, with just doing village maintenance at Jundee.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So he did that for quite a while.
Yeah.
He was doing that when we got married, and when we got married, we bought a little property in Bindoon,
Mm-hmm.
and then I fell pregnant with my first child, and then we moved to Carew to be closer to the family, and he got the job in Carew. But
Okay.
then he went back and got the job at Iluka
Yeah.
in the mine site.
So he started with Iluka. You had Jaxon, your
Yes,
eldest.
yep.
Yes.
And that was Jundee was a 3-in-1 roster.
Oh goodness.
Oh, that was awful. And then the next job was a 2-in-1. But even really, that's a long time to be away. But that was just the reality. Yeah. So he started his journey out at Iniabaron, working on different machines. He learnt a lot of machine work there, and he'd actually said to me then, "Oh, really like to get into the training side of it. I want to learn as much as I can here," which he did. He actually learnt all the machines. He was
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So the next job he got, out at Leinster, he slowly got into the training side of it there. Yeah.
And so he moved from Iluka, and then he was with Macca
With Macca
for a while.
for
Yes.
quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where he started his training
The training
journey.
career.
Yeah. And then he got a specific trainer and assessor's job with BHP. Yeah.
And that was up in the
That was up at Yandy.
Up at Yandy.
Yeah.
It sounds, reading your story, and we'll talk a little bit more about his colleagues, particularly his BHP colleagues. Just a real people person, and you can just
Yes.
and such a caring. So the fact that his career pathway took him into training and assessment, where he was there to make sure that everyone who arrived on site felt welcomed and everyone knew what to do and where to go and how to be confident, and it just an amazing man.
Yeah. He was a very loved man.
Yeah.
Most people, he had this ability for anybody that met him, he would somehow make them feel special. And a lot of people have said that to me. He just had that nature. And his youngest son is like a little clone of him.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
So you've got two boys and middle
And
Savannah.
yeah, Savannah's in the middle. Yeah.
And Orlando, just so our audience knows.
Yeah,
We've got,
Jaxon, Savannah and Orlando. Yeah.
I love those names, by the way. They're
Yeah.
beautiful. And they're also different.
Yeah.
So BHP, Yandy, it sounds like that stage in your lives. You've got the three kids. You were living in the hills in Perth, which seemed to be sort of a good blend between country living but having more amenity. Pretty good roster with BHP in those days. Things had improved quite a bit more of a family-friendly roster.
Yeah, he was doing 8 and 6 then.
Yeah.
So that was a lot better. And we were living in Jurien. We lived in Jurien Bay for 7 years. But when Jaxon went into year 7, we decided to send him to boarding school, give him a few more opportunities. He was very academic. And we did a year and I just hated it. Like I had Jaxon in Perth, I had Nige up north, and then I was in Jurien, and then Nige had to come drive to, drive to Jurien and then drive back. So we decided, the following year, that's it, we'll move to Perth.
Yeah. And Jaxon stayed at the same school, didn't he?
Yes, but he came out of boarding. Yeah. And in hindsight, I'm so glad that we did that.
Yeah. So it sounds like, you're all back together.
Yeah.
Jaxon was thriving at school. So you're back together as a family unit.
Yeah.
And then the absolute unimaginable happens.
Yeah, it did.
And just think we'll talk about the week, the
Mhm.
week home. That precious time for all FIFO families when you're together, and
Yeah.
Nige was at home, and then that last. You didn't know obviously that it would be his last swing home, but that last swing at home. Um, Tell us a little bit about that week, because you do reflect on it in the book, and there's some
Mm.
beautiful stories in there, and also the plans that you had in place for the future.
Yeah. We well, when we moved to Perth, we weren't really sure where we wanted to live. So we chose the hills because that's where Jackson's school was, and so we thought, right, we'll rent for a year,
Hmm.
and then if we like it, then we'll buy something. And we were just about to buy a property. Um, and the lead up week, yeah, he was on his days off. Nigel and I mean, like everybody, we had our ups and downs, but we had a very solid relationship. We were very good friends. So we were sitting out in the garden a couple of days before he flew back. And I'll never forget it. We were just sitting on a couple of tree stumps. And he said, I'm so happy. Yeah, so happy with my life and how we are now. Because everything's just coming together, because we had to work really hard to get to where we were at that stage. And as anybody knows in the mining industry, it's not an easy life, and I can tell you anything that's going to happen to your house, any sort of maintenance will happen when they're away. I can tell you that. Nothing happens when they're home. Anyway, he said, I'm happy. He goes, we've just got the best relationship, and I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to the future. Yeah, and then he flew back, and he actually was only flying up there for 3 days at this point because he'd had to come down. He was coming backwards and forwards a bit because they were putting in he was doing training and
Yeah.
things in Perth. So he flew up there, and he said he always rang me like before he left
Mhm.
site, but when he was coming home.
Yeah.
So this particular day he hadn't rung me, but I didn't think too much of it. You just go, oh, he must have got busy, whatever. And yeah, I was just about my Jaxon had gone to cricket training with my brother, and I was about to put the kids in the car and go to the airport to pick him up. And yes, I got the knock at the door. And yeah, the jigsaw of my life just crashed.
So Savannah and Orlando were home.
Yeah, quite bizarrely at the time, only 4. And he just loved police. And he came running in going, Mummy, police are at the door. There's a policeman at the door. Yay. I want to go and see the policeman. I was like, and I just knew.
You just knew straight
I
away.
just knew. Just like I knew when I met him. It was a knowing. And when they told me, it was so surreal. Just about like an out of body experience. Like somebody else was talking to me, and I I can remember like sliding down the side of the wall, but I wasn't really there. It was like something in me just said, "Oh, it's happened. Something's happened." I just knew,
Yeah.
and yeah, I have those words with me for the rest of my life. Sorry, he's passed away.
And so Orlando, and I'll talk a little bit about his story, reflecting on your book.
Yeah,
4, he's 4. Um,
yeah.
and it seems as if, so he knew he'd lost his dad, but almost like he thought he was still going to come back, and you had to go through
Oh,
that with him at 4. How old was Savannah?
she was 11.
Okay, and Jaxon was a bit older
She was
again.
14. Yeah.
Um, and your journey with Orlando, and we'll talk about the book, it's, at 4 losing a parent, I mean any age losing a parent, and losing a life partner, but I just, I lost my second son when my eldest son was 4.
Oh. Sorry to hear
And
that.
but when I was reading your story and Orlando's story, so much of that came back to me, because at 4 they can comprehend so much and they can comprehend love and loss, but then the practicality of that, but aren't they coming back? You know,
Yeah,
and
I do remember one night, I was putting all the kids to bed, and this is only probably 2 or 3 days after we lost Nige, and he knew that, you know, he'd gone, but he said to me, oh, he was crying in his bed, and he said, when's Daddy coming home? I just went, tough.
very tough.
It's tough. Tough, and Nige was a very hands-on dad,
Mm-hmm.
so the kids had an amazing relationship with him, and yeah, they'll never get over it. Yeah.
So the police, and we're going to delve into
Yep.
the week. So we've sort of the day, and now the week, because when we journey with our families, and as you would know, we work so diligently to try and put families in contact with Miners Promise and under our care as quick as possible,
Mm-hmm.
because what descends on you from the moment of the notification is unbelievable. And you know, we've journeyed with families for 15 years, and you know, a lot of the impetus for Helen Fitzroy establishing Miners Promise was to try and prevent other families for going through everything that she went through on her own without that support network. And through the book, you talk about some of the questioning and the, you know, everything that went on, and then the funeral planning, and how, you know, just it's a fog, isn't it? It's a fog.
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely a fog. It's like it descends on you, and it is. Yeah, it's like a veil comes over you. You don't quite know. Time goes slowly. Everything sort of goes into slow motion. Um, it's quite a bizarre feeling, and it's also, your body and your mind, protecting you against the enormity of the situation.
Mm.
So there is a reasoning behind it, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely a fog there, and there's so much that you have to do, and decisions you have to make very quickly.
Mm.
There's no time to waste. You have to organise a funeral, and then you've on top of that you've got to, have I got a will? Have I got this? What do I need this for? What am I going to be doing financially? Yeah, it's a really stressful, tough time, that's for sure. And also the emotional side, you go into shock as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a part of shock, I know myself, I lost hair. My nails came away from my nail beds. I shook uncontrollably for days. Yeah, lost a lot of weight. Shame I couldn't do that now. Yeah, so there's all that on top of
Mm.
these massive decisions you have to make, and wondering where you're going to get the money and the support to be able to do that,
To
even
literally
just
carry on.
and
Yeah.
to even know where to go and what, because a lot of the stuff that you deal with after a death you don't hear about in life, like when
Mm.
you haven't lost somebody.
Mm.
It's a whole nother world.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is. It's quite stressful. And Miners Promise, if you want me to talk a little bit.
Please.
So Nige wasn't a member of Miners Promise, but there was a fellow that he worked with, and he was wonderful. He used to ring me all the time, Dave, and he came around one day and he said, "Listen, I know of this place called Miners Promise. Nige might have been a member." And I said, "Look, I don't think he was, because I've never heard of it, and I
Mm-hmm.
think I would have heard of it." And he said, "Oh, I might just ring them anyway," and he did. Nothing really come of it then. What happened was I kept that in my mind, and I'd looked it up, and I saw that there was a book Helen's book,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought I really need that book because I was struggling. I felt like um, the world was going along a road, and I was going along at the same pace, but on a parallel road. So I just felt so alone, and especially in the mining world where um, he was so far away, and he had a whole nother family sort of thing, a
Mm-hmm.
mining family, and it was it's a very different thing. People had, their stories, and these are people I didn't know, and I was
Yeah.
like, well, how did I not know? It was very, very bizarre. So I wanted this book. So I rang up and I got hold of Tembi,
Yes.
and she actually told her Helen about me, and Helen rang me. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
So Tembi being Helen's
Helen's
daughter.
daughter.
So
Yeah.
Tembi lost her dad.
Yeah.
So there's parallels there,
Yeah.
and Helen, 2 boys and a
And
daughter, very,
yeah.
very similar to you.
Yeah.
And so noting, Nigel wasn't a member, but regardless, you
Didn't matter.
connected with
Yeah.
Helen. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Helen came to my house and just sat with me for felt like hours. I think I just sat there and cried. Not sure if I did much more, but she said, "Listen, we're going to have a support group, if you'd like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if it had a name then, did it? I don't.
It might not have.
I think they'd only had one before,
Right.
so it
Yes.
was fairly new.
Fairly new. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And and she came and picked me up and took
Oh.
me to it. We was down at Frio, and I can't tell you how I felt after that. It's like this big weight had lifted off my shoulders. I still cry about it now,
So we call it the Standing Together
standing together
group
now. Yeah.
now, and it's I think Minus Promise is so unique in so many ways, but one of the things that we do talk about all the time is that we journey with families. We meet families where they're at, and we journey with them for as long as they want us to. And part of those relationships, these relationships go on for years, because the grief journey, in some of our families' cases as well, the regulatory processes, the coronial, it's a years
So
and
much.
years long process. And the Standing Together forums are just such a beautiful way of bringing people together everyone's journey is unique and everyone's circumstance, but there's a commonality there. And as you say, that mining community, it's a way of life that then you can all understand
Yeah.
each other's journey and experiences.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And that was 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and there's still people in that initial group that I still talk to, and newer ones that I've met along the way.
Mm-hmm.
At different groups that we still all keep in contact, which is
Like,
lovely.
and we at Minus Promise so deeply appreciate your support for us, because in you continuing to come to the Standing Togethers, you're helping our more recent families on their journey, and it's just such a beautiful gift that we find our families do give back to other families, and
Yeah.
it's a privilege to watch those relationships blossom and you become each other's support network.
Yeah, because I don't think it ever, the loss doesn't go away. Obviously, time um, heals some of the pain, but you never forget the loss, and you can be brought back to that moment very, very quickly, at the drop of a hat. Even now, a smell or a song or anything. And so to be with people that are at the very beginning of their journey is, it's actually, I find it quite special, and I find it a privilege, because that is a tough time. And as a human, I think, it's good for us to look after each other in this world. So
Yes.
giving back in that way, I will always do that. especially for Miners Promise, because they were just so wonderful and gave me so much emotionally. Yeah.
The your first year after losing Nige, there was so much that happened to you and your
Yeah.
family in that year. You talk about through that period of grief and just, the new normal, which, nobody wants the new normal, and you were trying to find the new normal, and
Yeah.
you had such strong family support that, people do need to go back to their lives, and your mum and dad had to go home, and, Uncle Chris was obviously extremely supportive and so
Yeah.
engaged with the kids. But that first year, you talk about the fact that you remained committed to the gift of gratitude in life.
Mm-hmm.
And you also talk so beautifully about, and I love this word that you use, about empowerment, and how through that, particularly that first year or two, you and the kids were so focused on that expression of gratitude and that working on feeling empowered, even though none of you wanted to be in the circumstance you were
Mm.
in. Do you want to just maybe
Well,
explore that a bit more with us?
the the thing that with empowerment, I really talked a lot to my kids about that, because
Mm.
at a time of loss, um, it's very disempowering, and it's very easy to stay and feel disempowered. But through gratitude and, I mean, it's a hard thing to say gratitude when you've lost somebody like
Mm.
that. You think, well, why? But I'm grateful that I got to spend the time that I did with him. I'm grateful I've got 3 beautiful children, and I wanted them to grow up with seeing things as in a positive light,
Yeah.
not in a negative way.
Yeah.
So by empowering them with gratitude and with um, just being, grateful for life, then they get, and they're just beautiful kids now. They're all very, very empathetic, and um, yeah, that's the sort of kids they are now, because they were empowered and they know about being grateful for life and how easily life can be taken away. And it's how it's so easy too when you're in this situation, because 10 months after Nige passed away, I got faced with my own mortality when I got diagnosed with breast cancer. So I had to go through the cancer treatment, and my kids had to watch me, lose my hair. They watched me get very, very sick, and
Well, you were fighting for your life,
well, I was. That's right.
and you were fighting for your kids.
Yeah, yeah. So that's another reason why it's really important to be grateful for everything that you've got, because you just don't know what's around the corner. You just don't know if you're going to get that knock at the door or that diagnosis, or, so being grateful for everything that you've got, I think is really important. Yeah.
Robina, you're just inspiring. I mean, I think, Orlando then is 5, he's
Mm.
starting school, and you've got this personal battle now, and you're facing it on your own, and you've only, it's only less than a year since you lost Nige. Um, One of the things you talk about through that particular year, the first year and following that, but is the signs.
Oh, yeah.
And, we find so many of our families have these stories of the signs. And you wrote and I'm going to talk about the books and hold them up in a while, but you've also written a beautiful book, I guess mainly for Orlando
It was.
at his age, about, my shining star, being his dad. But do you want to maybe talk about the signs and how you and the kids found strength from that as well?
Yeah. Yes, we've had a lot of signs over the years.
Yeah.
With Orlando, he had this belief that any feather that he saw was part of his dad's angel wings.
Oh,
Yeah, so he used to
it's just
come
so
home
beautiful.
from kindy, and he'd have a backpack full of feathers. And I saw him at recess, and I saw him at lunch, and I saw him saw him in the playground, and I saw him, and he'd have all these feathers. So that was sort of, he found his Yes, my second book is My Shining Star. That's his journey to find his dad. Like, where is he? And he found it through nature, and he still is a nature boy
Yeah.
even to this day. He loves his gardening. Um, but the signs we've had so many different signs. I do remember that we were sitting around a fire pit, and it was Jaxon's birthday, and he had his teenage music on. And yeah, anyway, I said it's his birthday, he can have it today. But in the middle of this station he had on,
Mm.
um, all of a sudden a song played, and it was our wedding song. And this random, which you wouldn't hear on Triple J, I don't think. Don't think you'd hear Truly, Madly, Deeply on Triple J. So
Probably not.
no,
No.
probably not. So yeah, we all just sat and looked at each other, and I said, "Well, happy birthday from Dad," and he went, "Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, little things like that."
It's
All three kids are very aware of signs.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's one of the beautiful. I obviously have the absolute honour of working with Janine, and we can all look at
yeah,
Janine. Janine's here with us, supporting us
yeah,
today, and Janine talks to our families a lot about being open to the signs because they
yeah,
are there, and if you're open to them,
absolutely.
you see them.
Yeah,
And a lot of that came through so beautifully in your book and your reflections,
yeah,
and how your kids experience those signs also in different ways, but you encourage them to be open to it.
yeah.
And it's
Even
a
my
beautiful
daughter,
gift.
she'll go, "Oh, Mum, Dad was with me today," and something would have happened, and
Yeah,
yeah, she'll go, "And I'm pretty sure he must have stepped in," and I went, "Yeah, yeah, he's watching.
he's here.
He's here.
He's
It
still
was
with
all
us.
around us."
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you mentioned obviously 10 years you've known Minus Promise and our
yeah,
team,
yep,
and your kids are now young adults.
yes. Jackson's now graduated from university. He's a biologist. Savannah's in her third year of teaching,
Hmm.
and Orlando's just gone into year 10.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's a year 10's getting to the pointy end of high school.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and he's the naughty one too.
Orlando, if you're watching this, be good to your mum.
Be good and behave yourself.
Yeah, brush your teeth and eat your veggies. Uh, an amazing journey that you and the kids have had, and I know it's a journey that you would never want to have done without Nige, but the way that you have embraced what he gave you all and have carried that forward with the three of you is just such an amazing legacy, and the legacy that he left behind with his workmates. I'm going to talk a little bit now
Yeah,
about his photography particularly,
yeah.
and what a beautiful reflection that the team did up at Yandy for him with his photography.
Yandy team and his supervisor Richard. Um, yeah, they were just amazing to me. I have so much love and gratitude to them. But Nige, he had a real passion for photography,
Mm-hmm.
and he used to go out on site
Mm-hmm.
early mornings and evenings and get sunset and sunrise photos.
Yeah.
And they were on the Yandy the camera.
Yep.
So when he passed away, Richard spearheaded this amazing fundraising journey, and they actually got some of the photos blown up and framed, and they
Mm-hmm.
auctioned them off.
Oh,
He also had some made for me and the kids. People donated things, and they auctioned that off, and he raised an amazing amount of money. Just went through shift after shift because everybody knew Nige. He was
yeah.
yeah, and he raised about 75,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that would have made such a difference
Well,
to you.
it just meant I could breathe
Yeah.
because it's not always a quick process if you have insurance. So Nigel's insurance was took nearly 2 years. Yeah.
And that's not uncommon.
No, it's not. Not uncommon. And also, and you don't have a will. You know, we had a will, but if you don't, it can take
Mm.
forever, and your accounts get frozen, and so all these things you need to have in place. Thing that people don't realise, because we have this as humans, we have this idea in our head that it'll never happen to us, that it'll be somebody else, and I maybe was that person too.
Yeah.
Not until it happens to you that you think, wow. Yeah.
Our first podcast, which is being released very soon,
Yeah.
is actually about that. It's about estate
yeah.
and succession planning, and just, the compound on tragedy when there's no wills in place, or there's no, it is, and the families, as you say, they're in complete limbo. The legal processes are what they are, and they're not family friendly. And the burden, actually having your affairs in order, as Janine describes it, is an act of kindness and a gift for your family. And I know none of us really like thinking about our own mortality, but it will happen every day to all of us, and you don't know when, as you've said. You don't know the knock on the door, you don't know the diagnosis, and actually having everything in place is a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly is. That's one thing that I try to tell people. I did go on a like a regional book tour
Mm-hmm.
with my book. Orlando came with me. I homeschooled him for a year, and off we went. And that was one thing that I really stressed
Yeah.
to everywhere I went. Make sure you have your affairs in order, because and things like make sure you've got passwords written down.
Yes.
Things like that. I mean, it's just little things like that. Yeah, it's really important.
But when you're in the fog of grief and you've already talked about everything that you need to do, and then on top of that you can't access things and you don't know passwords, and it's
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah. Very, very difficult.
So it's always good to have a will in place.
It's something that we can ease the burden on those left behind.
Yeah. Yep.
So with Nigel and his photography, and you talked about fundraising. So, we are a charity, and while some people think that because we're in the mining sector, we must have a lot of money and a lot of funding, and that's not true. And it's a little bit similar actually to people maybe not wanting to have their affairs in order. As a charity, when we're engaging with the mining sector, safety is the number one priority. The effort that companies do put into ensuring the health, safety and wellbeing of their workers is immense and intense. And we are so, we strongly respect and recognise that. And then we're looking for funding for something that nobody wants to ever happen. And it's difficult. It's a difficult conversation, and I'm on both sides of the table because I work in the sector as well as very privileged to be involved in Miners' Promise as I am. So we're always thinking about innovative ways to raise funds. And one of the ideas that I had actually after reading your book was a photography competition.
Great idea.
And I reckon Nige could have a submission or two for this photography competition, because, we see, for those of us that have worked on sites and are on, the Facebook groups, and some of the photos, particularly as you say, sunrise and sunset, on
beautiful,
stunning, aren't they? So maybe we could have a photography competition, bit in memory of Nige, and
that would be wonderful.
Maybe a calendar, cards. I'm thinking all sorts of things now. My mind was running.
That's fantastic,
and we use it as a bit of a fundraiser.
And a lot of places where mines are is spectacular country.
Yeah.
One of the photos that is actually my favourite, it's actually a sunrise, and I don't know if people out there know about I don't even know what they're called.
That's right, just describe it.
They're like a conveyor belts.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
I guess, and it comes up to a point.
Yeah.
And he's got a photo of the sun just in between the two conveyor belts.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's amazing.
You might want to submit that one.
Yeah, I'll submit that one.
Nige might win the competition.
Yeah, he would.
You never know.
You never know.
I'm just going to lean forward and grab your books. So, this Hello Grief, Be My Friend, that's the book that I have recently read. we do share this book with our families, as you know, and
Yeah.
it is Just a Number by Helen as well. Different journeys, different stories, but both so beautiful for our families going through or starting that journey. My Shining Star, and you can find all of these online by just looking up Robina. My Shining Star, we share with the children
Yeah.
of our families, because it's just a beautiful way to engage with particularly younger children about the loss of a parent. And we also use this book, My Warrior Mum. So this is about your cancer journey more specifically, and you know, your children going through that with you. And, you know, while we do talk about our bereavement support particularly, we support families going through all forms of trauma and crisis, and we
Right.
support a lot of families going through cancer diagnoses.
Yeah.
So these books are something that we use as tools to
Yeah.
support our family, and that is just an amazing gift that you've given our community.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, it's not something I ever. I look, if 10 years ago, if you thought if I just never thought I'd be sitting here right now. It m- truly made me embark on a whole new life, whole new way of thinking. And you can always look at things two ways. You can either choose the path of self destruction, or you can take what's been thrown at you and use it use it positively. And I've chosen that way, to be able to help people and through their journeys, because it's a very lonely time. And if I can do that with books through Miner's Promise, yeah, I think there's a little part of my job done in this life
And Nigel's legacy.
and Nigel's legacy.
You know, you have raised your children and you're living your life the way that he lived his,
Basically,
you know,
yeah,
which is just amazing and so inspiring, Rebecca.
yeah, thank you.
It's been an absolute honour to spend time with you. I'm tearing up. It's been an honour to spend time with you this morning, and I laughed and I cried when I read your book, bit of both. And yeah, it's been an absolute honour to spend some time with you this morning. And I know that everyone who watches this podcast will be inspired by your journey, saddened and confronted as we always are, but also mainly inspired and left with hope. And also knowing that in circumstances where you are in the mining, energy or resources sector, we're here.
Yeah,
If you're not a member, if you're not sure, ring us, because
yeah.
we are here for everyone in our sector.
And out there, don't hesitate to become a member, because it's invaluable if that time ever happens. But thank you very much for allowing me to come and tell me my story today. I really appreciate it, and it's been lovely chatting to you.
Thank you so much, Robina. Thank you, everyone. That's the second episode of the Miner's Promise podcast series. We look forward to bringing more stories to you as the year goes on. It's been an honour being here with Robina today. Thanks again to Josh Collins, the Gold Dream podcast, and to Problematic Media. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.